So it is my pleasure to introduce Kate Hertweck. She's going to give a talk on coordination and collaboration within teams using R. So I've known Kate for a while, and she is an awesome teacher. So take it away, Kate.
Pitch a last minute idea to fill in a spot for someone else who couldn't end up making it. And hopefully what I'm going to do is help us summarize and think about connections among all of the different amazing pieces of work we've already seen so far. So I'm talking about collaboration within teams, which we've already heard about at this conference through Diana Dishman's talk that was pre-recorded, included in the digital tracks yesterday, as well as both of the keynote speakers this morning. And so my goal here is to help us integrate across some of these different viewpoints and try to generalize and draw some themes out. The alternative title that I had considered for my talk was There's No R in Team, but here's how you put the R in a team. And then I tried really hard to make this into some type of clever acronym, but the closest I got is this, which is honestly not very successful. So that was my effort at being clever. Yep. I'm all done.
So Kate, just a quick, you're showing, I'm seeing the other screen, the one with your crowdcast. So you probably.
Oh, I am sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay,
yeah, I saw the Google Slides for a second.
Okay.
There you go.
Interesting. It's funny, you know, how these things work, and the test that we do when we are in the green room doesn't quite work out. So here's my really bad joke that you didn't get to see, and I probably should have just left it and not gone back to it at all. But go, here am go. All right, so the first question that you might want to think about is, when I say team, what exactly do I mean? In particular, we think about teams along a real range, and it's not exactly a complete spectrum, but the range that we think about is from geographically proximate teams that are working together in a professional sense, so they're employed and paid money to be able to work with R. The alternative are globally distributed teams, often working on open source projects that are volunteer-led and volunteer-driven. And so, in effect, what we're talking about are teams that may have very different motivations associated with the work that they do. They may have different levels of expertise in R. So people who are fully trained professionals all the way through to newbies who are just getting started in R. There are different types of hierarchies about how decisions are made in the team. Some of them are led by a single person. Some of them are led by sort of cooperative community input. Also, teams may work together for different levels of time. And whether or not everyone actually does coding, like Diana's talked about yesterday, really affects sort of the composition and the nature of the work being done. So the perspective that I'm coming from is from working with a variety of different teams, ranging from, you know, training a group of graduate students and undergraduate students who are working on independent projects and perhaps doing some minor collaboration, to participating in sort of globally distributed training materials development or data analysis, and working on open source projects. And in particular, I've been thinking a lot lately about the influence that teams have on the software development process. This is where I have to put in an obligatory plug for a book that will be in print very soon, although you can read it online for free at the URL indicated there. I know, I'm talking about Python, but it's okay. So this initial book helped us think about the process of research software engineering from a Python perspective. And never fear, we are continuing to work on the R version. There's not much on that website, but the GitHub repo has a lot of information about the same sort of process. What we've learned through thinking about this perspective of trying to support people is that developing robust software that will be sustainable into the future should assume that there are multiple individuals or a team contributing to it. The second perspective that I come from is from a very collaborative environment. I've been involved with the Carpentries for several years now as an instructor, a trainer, and a member of community governance. And the assumption that the Carpentries makes, and what I've seen modeled across their organization, is that everyone should be able to participate in a distributed tech product. Now, there are lots of other fantastic examples of projects that help to demonstrate both the technical and the community or people aspect of developing software. And what I'm excited to do today is to help us think about combining some of these ideas together. And so the way to think about it is like, we're going to do some work in R. We're going to do teamwork in R. And it's great. What you need to do is learn R. But then you quickly learn you also need to learn RStudio. Maybe you need to think about the RStudio cloud thing, which frankly is not a huge deal once you understand it conceptually, but it really throws some people for a loop, right? So it's difficult to comprehend, wait, where's my code running? So then you also have to think about what packages you're going to use. Are you working in the tidyverse? What is the tidyverse and what's included in the tidyverse? Oh, and then there's also this shiny thing that is really popular. We just had a whole session about it. Maybe you should learn something about that. Also use this and our Markdown. You really need to learn something about those too. Oh, and plus you need to learn this whole other thing that's not actually about R, but is going to be pretty essential for you to do that. You do not merely just work with R. We work with lots of things, and that can be really, really difficult. So one way to think about this, in particular, I've been working on the Git chapters associated with the Research Software Engineering in R book. And what we have been thinking about, and again, this is also why it is beautiful to work with a group of people when, writing a book on how to do things. It is an aggregate of everyone's opinion. Okay, so the things we think about, okay, what interface do you use for Git? Even within RStudio, you have Git integration, you have use this functions that allow you to interact with Git and Gert functions as well. And then you also have the terminal where you can do Git on the command line. And that's only within RStudio. Then you have to think about how it is that you interact with each other of drafting pull requests, or do you only push a pull request when it's ready to be accepted? How do you communicate? Do you use gists? Do you have a wiki in your project, or the new discussions, which honestly, I still haven't wrapped my brain around? How do you organize people associated with the work that you do? And then what's your basic model for contributing in a project? All of these are really cognitively complex decisions that we have to make. And imagine, what if I don't even know how to use Git in the first place? How do I contribute? With that in mind, it's worth thinking about when these choices matter. When you're trying to support a group of people, that may be involved in when you're initially getting a project going, if you're recruiting people to work on a team. It may be involved if you are trying to onboard someone to an existing team. Or it might be when anything changes in the R ecosystem. So guess what? These decisions matter all the time. You are never going to be able to escape them. What are the consequences of not making it clear what the team's directive is in working with different tools and approaches? The icon says it all. Like, a lot of frustration and stress, a lot of wasted effort. If you have to transition how it is you've submitted a pull request, or if you have to make modifications to code style, that's really frustrating. That's really demotivating. Demotivation leads to higher turnover among teams, an inability to be able to keep people satisfied with their jobs. Recruiting talent gets harder. And ultimately, it leads to a really homogenous workforce. And again, there are plenty of other people who have thought about the effects of this in a broad sense. But in essence, your team suffers if you do not have consensus. And a lot of these things, again, they're hidden. If you've worked in the field already, it's not a big deal. But when you are trying to support a team, then it becomes much more difficult. So what do we do about it? Well, we have a lot of fantastic resources that are already available for us. I really like that here I have like an entire project, a blog post, a book, and then just Ellis. Ellis is a resource because when I pitched this talk idea, he said, yes, absolutely, let's think about this, and then spit out about 6 things that he felt were particularly important. And I was like, thanks, Ellis. Can I quote you? And then I got, a couple of slides from that. Thank you. So let's think a little bit more specifically about approaches. First off, we can consider technical tools. What are the specific pieces of software or specific ideas about our code that we need to use in order to facilitate better collaboration? And then what do we need to do with culture and behavior to be able to support people in using those tools? These are not a complete dichotomy. They're not mutually exclusive. But again, they're a useful way to think about some of our decisions. So some of the tools we use for collaboration are software. And so some of these are things we've already talked about today so far. Using RStudio and tools available in it, including R Markdown for reproducible reports. I've already talked about using Git and GitHub, and there are some fantastic resources that help you think about using those pieces of software more effectively. And again, helping guide people towards the way that a team does things. Additionally, though, thinking about the nature of the code you're writing and expectations around how it's structured. This can include things like whether or not you're using tidyverse, or whether or not you're going to accept solutions that could be done in tidyverse, but that are not in the code already. It's thinking about the use this function and how it is that you are structuring things. And again, there are pre-programmed ways to do this. Is that what your team is accepting to do? Are you going to do things the tidyverse way? Additionally, thinking about requiring tests. Whether or not someone wants to add an additional dependency can be a huge deal. I see your chat messages, folks, like this is not trivial. And in general, thinking about what is the design of your software? How do you help people orient to that? If we're thinking about the collaboration option, the first issue is about just coordinating people. These are basic project management issues. Thinking about contribution guidelines. What does a contribution guideline mean? What needs to be included? I feel like licensing is a very undervalued part of coordinating people, literally telling people how they can use your work. Other project management things like timelines and roadmaps, and how you prioritize things. The use of reproducible examples, the use of code review, all of these are about building culture, but largely about helping connect people together. Moreover, supporting people includes a lot of basics that have started to become commonplace, like a code of conduct, and things that are perhaps less apparent in a lot of projects. Who makes decisions about what things are priorities? Who runs the meetings? How do you handle things when someone gets upset? And then another thing that Ellis pointed out was that the rate at which you provide feedback matters too. Are you going to let somebody's PR languish for weeks at a time if they have done it as a volunteer? All of these matter in how you can manage people on your team and help them feel included. If you know me, you know I'm on a big dog kick right now. Really, it's a little dog. I'm petting him so he doesn't bark right now. And essentially, the diversity of dogs does a great job sort of helping document the diversity of teams. There's not going to be any one-size-fits-all solution. We've heard some about this today already. Moreover, it's probably not useful to exhaustively go down this checklist and say, now I've done everything I need to do. However, I have a blank slide in there somewhere. Clarifying these technical expectations are going to make you a better programmer. And supporting inclusive culture ultimately makes your coding project better. And I think there have been other very intelligent people who have described the rationale for that much more effectively today. And I'm hoping that what I've done is help orient you to some specific ways that you can think about finding the pressure points in your particular team and trying to find solutions for making it a bit easier. Here is my co-author, Loki. He has been very kind as to listen to all of my ideas over the last few weeks about this. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter, and you can also find my work on GitHub. Thank you so much.